the voice of humanity. Under Augustus's rule, Rome entered one of the most stable and peaceful periods in its history. This era became known as Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Spanning nearly 2 centuries, this period brought relative tranquility, economic vitality, and cultural development across Roman territories. Roads, aqueducts, amphitheaters, and massive public structures were constructed. Rome was no longer just a city or an army. It had become a system, a world order. Across a vast territory from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria, millions of people lived under Roman rule. After Augustus, emperors with different personalities came to power. Some were wise rulers, others would be remembered for their cruelty. Tiberius followed Augustus with a stable but tense reign. Caligula succeeded him, remembered for rumors about his sanity and erratic decisions. Under Claudius, Britain was conquered and Rome's western frontier expanded. His successor, Nero, swung between artistic obsession and despotism. After the Great Fire of Rome, he shifted public blame onto the Christians. This marked one of the first periods of systematic persecution of Christians. Although the empire was shaken by occasional crises, assassinations, and power struggles, the system endured. Vespasian and his son Titus restored order and focused on major public projects. Iconic structures like the Colosseum were built during their reign, yet even Rome could not withstand nature's power. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius destroyed Pompeii and Herculaneum. Thousands perished instantly, and the cities were buried under ash and stone for centuries. Rome saw its most capable and just rulers in the 2nd century, beginning with Nerva and followed by Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. This was the age of the 5 good emperors. Under Trajan, Rome reached its greatest territorial extent. His conquest of Dacia, present-day Romania, introduced Roman culture to new frontiers. Hadrian adopted a defensive policy and built Hadrian's Wall in Britain. Antoninus Pius governed at peace. Marcus Aurelius, both a philosopher and emperor, wrote Meditations, a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy still read today. However, Marcus Aurelius's reign faced challenges from Germanic tribes in the north and Parthian threats in the east. His death marked the beginning of Rome's decline. His son, Commodus, diminished imperial prestige with his extravagance and self-indulgence. Internal balance between Senate, army, and emperor collapsed. Generals frequently marched on Rome with their legions to claim the throne, often ruling briefly and chaotically. The 3rd century was an age of crisis for Rome. More than 30 emperors rose and fell in just a century. Economic collapse, disease, external invasions, and civil unrest combined to shake the empire's foundations. Amid this chaos, a new administrative vision emerged. Emperor Diocletian not only seized power, but transformed Rome's government. He introduced tetrarchy, dividing the empire into east and west, each ruled by an Augustus and his deputy Caesar. Though effective short-term, this division ultimately paved the way for permanent fragmentation. As the Eastern and Western Roman empires gradually evolved into distinct entities, a more profound transformation was underway: Christianity. Initially at odds with Rome's official religions, Christianity endured centuries of persecution. By the 4th century, under Emperor Constantine, it gained imperial protection. The Edict of Milan in 313 CE granted Christians the freedom to worship. Constantine also established a new capital, Byzantium, which he rebuilt and renamed Constantinople. This city would later become the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire, known to history as Byzantium. Meanwhile, the Western Empire was faltering. Economic ruin, barbarian incursions, weak leadership, and public disengagement eroded its structure. In 410 CE, the Visigoths sacked Rome. People who once believed the Eternal City invincible now faced the reality of its vulnerability. In 455, the Vandals delivered a second blow with another brutal sack. Finally, in 476, the Germanic general Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus. The Western Roman Empire had officially fallen, yet the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantium, endured and even thrived. Though it gradually adopted Greek language and customs, its citizens still called themselves Romans. The legacy of Rome continued, now infused with Eastern culture and Christian theology. The capital was no longer Rome, the language no longer Latin, but the empire still bore the soul of Rome. While the Western Roman Empire collapsed, the Eastern Roman Empire survived and gradually transformed into what is now called the Byzantine Empire. Latin gave way to Greek as the dominant language, and Constantinople became the imperial capital instead of Rome. Yet, the people of the Eastern Empire still identified themselves as Romans. This was not merely a political identity, but a cultural and religious one as well. The Eastern Roman Empire preserved many Roman traditions while blending them with Hellenistic culture and Orthodox Christianity. One of the most significant rulers of the Byzantine era was Emperor Justinian I in the 6th century. His reign marked one of the empire's brightest periods. Justinian aimed to reunify the old Roman territories and restore the empire's former glory. He entrusted his brilliant general Belisarius with military campaigns that recaptured North Africa, Italy, and parts of Spain. These conquests were impressive but costly, draining the imperial treasury and overburdening the population with heavy taxes. Justinian's most lasting legacy was not military, but legal. He commissioned the compilation of Roman law into a single, coherent legal code known as the Corpus Juris Civilis, or the body of civil law. This monumental work became the foundation for many modern legal systems in Europe and remains a key source for understanding Roman law. During Justinian's reign, Constantinople also saw remarkable architectural achievements. The Hagia Sophia, a vast cathedral, was rebuilt after a previous church had been destroyed. Its massive dome and intricate mosaics symbolized imperial power and religious devotion. The city thrived as a cultural, religious, and economic center, standing as a beacon of Roman heritage in the East. However, Justinian's efforts could not stop the gradual weakening of the empire. In the following centuries, the Byzantines faced external pressures from new powers. The rapid expansion of Arab Muslim armies in the 7th and 8th centuries led to the loss of Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and North Africa. These lands had been vital to the empire's economy and grain supply, and their loss marked a turning point. The Byzantines were forced into defensive warfare, protecting their shrinking territories. Internal challenges further complicated Byzantine stability. The empire became embroiled in religious controversies, most notably the iconoclasm dispute over the use of religious images. From then on, the Byzantine state gradually contracted, overshadowed by rising powers, especially the Ottomans. By the 15th century, Constantinople was a weakened enclave surrounded by Ottoman territories. On May 29, 1453, Sultan Mehmed II led the final siege and capture of Constantinople, marking the definitive end of the Roman legacy as a political entity. Rome was not just an empire built by conquest, its durability came from the order it established, the institutions it developed, and the ideology that held it together. The secret to Rome's longevity was found in its laws, military system, architecture, and the strong sense of identity it fostered among its people. Roman citizens did not merely see imperial allegiance as political obligation, it was a way of life. The phrase civis Romanus sum, I am a Roman citizen, carried honor and protection throughout the vast empire. The Roman legal system was one of the pillars of the empire. It detailed citizens' rights, property ownership, inheritance, commerce, and divorce. Initially, Roman law applied only to Roman citizens but gradually expanded across the empire. Codifying the law prevented arbitrary rule and established checks on power. The 12 Tables laid the foundation of this legal framework, which expanded over centuries. Later, Justinian's legal codification became a cornerstone of European legal traditions. The law was a means to ensure justice applied equally to all, not just the elite or rulers. The military was equally crucial. Roman legions were not mere fighting forces, but symbols of discipline, loyalty, and civic duty. Each legion consisted of thousands of trained soldiers who earned land and citizenship after years of service. This system motivated soldiers and reinforced imperial loyalty. Roman armies were also engineering marvels, building bridges, fortifications, and siege engines during campaigns. Many Roman roads still exist today because they were engineered for legions to move swiftly and efficiently. Rome's urban infrastructure was highly advanced. Cities featured forums, baths, aqueducts, sewage systems, amphitheaters, and temples. Cities were built on a strict grid plan, with straight roads intersecting at right angles, forums at the center, and public buildings arranged logically. Aqueducts brought fresh water from distant sources. Sewage systems prevented flooding and disease. This infrastructure allowed daily life to run smoothly and healthily. Society was stratified. Patricians, the aristocratic class, held political power and land. Plebeians were common citizens, artisans, traders, farmers. Slaves formed a significant class, consisting of war captives, debtors, or those born into slavery. Slavery was integral to Roman society. Some slaves could earn freedom, become wealthy merchants, or gain citizenship. The social hierarchy was rigid, but not entirely fixed. Social mobility was possible. Daily life was surprisingly organized. Rich citizens woke early, bathed in public baths, participated in politics at the forum, and attended banquets. Traders opened shops, slaves went to markets, children went to school or received private tutoring. Education was crucial, especially for boys, focusing on reading, writing, rhetoric, and Greek philosophy. Women typically managed households, but wealthy women often engaged in cultural and sometimes political activities. Entertainment was central. The Colosseum hosted gladiator combats, amphitheaters staged plays, chariot races and festivals added color to public life. These events were not just leisure but tools for political control. The policy of bread and circuses providing free food and entertainment kept the population content and distracted from political unrest. Religion evolved dramatically. Early Rome was polytheistic, with a pantheon of gods like Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Minerva. Gods were seen as guarantors of social order. Temples were centers not only of worship, but also of political and social life. Emperors were were increasingly deified, especially after Augustus. However, monotheistic religions such as Judaism and Christianity conflicted with Roman religious customs. Jews faced tension for refusing to worship the emperor. Christians, initially a small sect, spread rapidly despite persecution. Many Christians were martyred in arenas. Their steadfastness ironically strengthened the faith. Emperor Constantine eventually legalized Christianity, and it became the empire's official religion. Rome transformed from a city of many gods to a center of Christian worship. Latin, Rome's language, remained the language of law, science, literature, and religion for centuries. Romance languages such as French, Spanish, Italian, Romanian, and Portuguese evolved directly from Latin. The Roman alphabet is the foundation of Western written communication. Each letter carries the weight of millennia of tradition. Roman architecture still influences the world. The dome, arches, concrete, roads, and aqueducts were Roman engineering marvels. Modern stadiums, government buildings, and courthouses draw inspiration from Roman designs. Renaissance architects like Michelangelo studied Roman ruins to create their masterpieces. Politically, Rome shaped modern ideas of republicanism, citizenship, Senate, veto, and law. The American Constitution and French revolutionary ideals drew heavily from Roman models. Rome was not just a military power, but a system of governance and ideas. Rome's impact extends beyond history books, in language, urban planning, law, governance, art, and philosophy. It was more than an empire. It was a civilization. Its stones and ideas were both strong. Buildings fell and armies dissolved, but Roman ideas endured. Rome's story is not a tale of an end, but of beginnings, the birth of the modern world. Its legacy shaped Europe and beyond. This is why, centuries later, people ask, why did Rome last so long, and what can we learn from it? Rome's fall has puzzled historians for centuries. It was not just the collapse of a state, but a transformation of a civilization, culture, and system of thought. The fall of Rome cannot be pinned to a single cause. Military, economic, political, cultural, and moral factors combined to unravel this vast empire. Economically, Rome had long relied on the spoils of war. Gold, silver, and slaves from conquered lands flowed like lifeblood through the empire's veins. When expansion slowed, these resources dwindled. Large landowners oppressed small farmers, cities faced unemployment, and rural populations became impoverished. Inflation soared, tax systems failed, and trade routes became unsafe. Money lost value, and many abandoned their land seeking protection in large estates. Militarily, Rome's collapse was even more dramatic. The legion system broke down as the army increasingly relied on foreign mercenaries rather than Roman citizens. These soldiers fought not for Rome, but for their paymasters. Loyalty shifted from emperor to general, causing frequent civil wars and power struggles. Assassinations and coups revealed the government's weakness. Rome's defenses remained strong against external enemies, but disintegrated from within. The barbarian migrations dealt the final blows. The Huns' advance from Central Asia pushed Germanic tribes westward. Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Vandals, and Franks swept into Roman lands. In 410, Rome was sacked by the Visigoths, shattering the myth of invincibility. The trauma marked the end of the Eternal City as a symbol of power. Another sack came in 455 by the Vandals. Finally, in 476, the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed. The Western Roman Empire ceased to exist. The Eastern Roman Empire, known as Byzantium, survived much longer. This showed Rome was not only a political entity, but also a culture and idea. Rome fell, but the Roman idea lived on, transforming through time and space. The Holy Roman Empire in medieval Europe claimed to be Rome's heir. The Ottomans, after conquering Constantinople, called their ruler Kaiser Rum, Caesar of Rome. In modern times, Rome's legacy deeply influenced politics and culture. Enlightenment thinkers rediscovered Roman law and politics. The American and French revolutions drew inspiration from Roman Republic ideals. Concepts of citizenship, veto power, Senate, and Republic trace their roots to Rome. Rome was not just an army, but a system of ideas and organization. Rome teaches us many lessons. First, no power lasts forever. If Rome, so vast, rich, and advanced, could fall, no system is invincible. Power's endurance depends not only on armies and fortresses, but on justice, equality, internal balance, and connection with the people. When Rome weakened those bonds, collapse became inevitable. Second, unity in diversity is vital. Rome managed to hold many peoples, religions, and cultures together. That ability was its greatest achievement. Third, culture and law are powerful tools. Rome conquered not only by the sword, but by the pen. Its roads and laws were equally lasting. Theater, architecture, language, and education were vehicles of Roman influence. We still speak Latin-derived languages, write with Roman letters, and use Roman law principles. Rome conquered minds, and that conquest grew stronger over time. What about the people of Rome? They lived ordinary lives. Children played, young people loved, old people prayed to gods, slaves dreamed of freedom, soldiers of land, politicians of power. Every person had a story. The empire was not made only of emperors and generals, but of the millions who walked its streets, cheered in arenas, prayed in temples, and worked fields. Rome's greatness lay not in its stones, but in the hands that placed them. Its true legacy is the human effort that never vanished. Perhaps this is why when we think of Rome, we see not a fallen city, but a living memory. The footsteps of gladiators echo under the Colosseum's shadow. Ancient roads whisper the stories of the past. Many empires rose and fell, but none are spoken of like Rome, because Rome is not a moment, but a human saga. Today, when we look at a statue in a museum, translate an ancient text, or study a modern building's columns, we touch Rome. So we do not say Rome fell. We say Rome was passed on, transformed, evolved. Its spirit donned new bodies throughout history. As long as humanity exists, so too will Rome, in one form or another. The invention of the calendar. A very long story. Calendars are tools made by humans to understand time. They help people know what day it is, when to plant crops, and when to celebrate events. But the story of how calendars were made is not fast nor exciting. It is long, slow, and full of small changes over many centuries. The earliest calendars were based on the moon. People looked at the sky and saw that the moon changed shape. It went from new to full and back to new again. They counted these changes. Each full cycle was 1 month. This method was simple, but not perfect. A year of 12 moon cycles is about 354 days, which is shorter than the solar year. So, the months and seasons slowly stopped matching. Later, some civilizations used the sun instead. The Egyptians, for example, made a solar calendar. They noticed that the Nile River flooded every year at about the same time. This event helped them count the length of the year. Their calendar had 365 days. But they had no leap years, so over time, the calendar slowly drifted. The Romans also created a calendar. At first, it had only 10 months. Then 2 months were added, January and February. Later, Julius Caesar changed everything again. He made the Julian calendar in 46 BCE. This calendar had 365 days and added one extra day every 4 years. This was called a leap year. It helped fix the drifting problem, but even this calendar was not perfect. A year is not exactly 365.25 days. It is a bit shorter, about 365.242 days. That small difference caused the calendar to slowly move off track again. So in 1582, Pope Gregory XIII made another change. He introduced the Gregorian calendar. He removed 10 days to fix the error and changed the leap year rule slightly. In this system, not all years that end in 00 are leap years, only if they can be divided by 400. This calendar is still used today in most of the world, but some countries took a long time to accept it. For example, Britain did not use the Gregorian calendar until 1752. By then, the calendar was 11 days off, so people went to sleep on September 2nd and woke up on September 14th. Some were confused. Some thought they had lost 11 days of their lives. Calendars are everywhere. We use them every day. But few people think about where they came from or how much effort it took to make them accurate. It is a story full of numbers, dates, and adjustments. It is not a story of action or adventure. It is slow, careful, and quiet. And in that quietness, the mind may begin to drift, like time itself. Why hours have 60 minutes. A history of timekeeping. Time is something we use every day, but few people stop to think about how it is measured. We look at clocks, we count hours, minutes, and seconds. But why are there 60 minutes in an hour? Why not 100? Why 24 hours in a day? These choices come from very old systems, and the answers are not fast or exciting. They are long and full of small decisions made a long time ago. The story begins in ancient Mesopotamia, over 4,000 years ago. The people there used a number system based on 60. This is called the sexagesimal system. They used it because 60 can be divided by many numbers: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 10, 12, 15 to 20, and 30. This made it easy for trade and measurement. It was not based on nature, but on ease of use. Later, the Babylonians used this system to divide time. They were very interested in the stars. They watched the sky and made early forms of astronomy. They decided that the sky moved in a circle, and a circle was divided into 360 degrees. This was a round number, and it made sense to them. Later, they used similar ideas for time. The Egyptians divided the day into 24 parts. They had 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness. These hours were not always the same length. In summer, daylight hours were longer. In winter, shorter. Time was not fixed, but it was divided. This division of 12 came from their counting system. They used their fingers, not just to count to 10, but also to count the spaces between fingers on one hand. 12 spaces. When mechanical clocks were invented in medieval Europe, they needed to fix the length of hours. 1 hour became 60 minutes. 1 minute became 60 seconds. These divisions were kept because of tradition. They were based on what earlier civilizations had done, and so we still have them today. There were other ideas. During the French Revolution, some thinkers wanted to divide the day into 10 hours, each with 100 minutes, each with 100 seconds. But this idea did not last. People were used to 24 hours, 60 minutes, and 60 seconds. Changing it was too difficult. Now we use digital clocks and atomic watches. Time is more exact than ever, but we still follow the old patterns. We still divide time like the Babylonians and Egyptians did. This system is not natural. It was made by people, slowly, carefully, quietly. When we think about time, we imagine movement. But the systems we use to measure it are still. They do not change. They repeat, like the ticking of a clock, like the turning of the earth, like a breath in sleep. Ancient bureaucracy, the art of keeping a list. As humans began to measure time, they also began to organize their lives around it. Time brought structure, and structure needed records. In early civilizations, this meant writing things down, not poems, not stories, but lists, long, detailed, repetitive lists. In Mesopotamia, some of the earliest forms of writing were not used for telling tales. They were used for tracking goods. Clay tablets were filled with simple records: how much grain was stored, how many sheep were traded, how many jars of oil were delivered. These lists were not exciting. They were careful, repeated, predictable. One tablet might say 30 sacks of barley to the temple, 12 goats for the priests, 8 jars of beer to the workers, 1 ox missing. And the next tablet might say almost the same thing, with only the numbers changed. These records were essential. They told people what had happened and when. They were early forms of bureaucracy. The same habit continued in Egypt. Scribes would write long rolls of papyrus with rows of items, workers, tools, days worked, rations given. Everything was counted, and everything was written down. The goal was not to entertain, but to maintain order. In Rome, records were kept on wax tablets. In China, on bamboo strips. In the Islamic world, on carefully inked paper scrolls. Different materials, same logic. A list, a date, a number, a repetition. Each empire needed to know what it owned, what it owed, what it gave away, and what it needed. These lists filled shelves. They were stored in rooms with no windows. They were read by few, understood by fewer, but still they were made. Day after day, year after year, the records became tradition. The tradition became law. The law became habit. This way of writing, factual, cold, slow, has lasted thousands of years. Even today, when we check receipts, fill in forms, or read reports, we are part of the same story. We are continuing the same list, the same calm repetition, the same quiet order. And in this quiet, the mind can rest. There is no surprise, no climax, only the rhythm of records, like the ticking of a clock, like the turning of a page, like the falling of sleep. Medieval monasteries and the regulation of time. In the quiet stone walls of medieval monasteries, time moved differently. It did not follow the ringing of clocks or the turning of gears. Instead, it followed prayers, gentle, steady, repeating prayers. The day was divided into 8 parts, known as the canonical hours. These were not hours in the modern sense. They were fixed times for prayer spread across both day and night. The names were in Latin: matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline. Each prayer came at a regular time. Some were at dawn, others at mid-morning, midday, and afternoon. Some came when it was already dark. Even in the middle of the night, monks would rise from their beds, walk in silence, and gather to chant. The chants were always the same: psalms sung slowly, words that repeated, day after day, month after month, year after year. The melody did not change, the rhythm did not speed up, and the silence between the chants was just as important as the sound. Between the prayers there was work, but even that followed a strict schedule. Farming, copying books, tending gardens, preparing food, all happened at assigned times. Meals were eaten in silence. Books were read aloud while others listened. Bells rang not for drama, but for order. One bell for prime, another for sext, another for compline. Time in the monastery was not free. It was not personal. It belonged to the order, and the order belonged to God. But this strictness brought peace. There was no rush, no surprises, only the quiet comfort of knowing exactly what comes next. Every monk, every day walked the same path, heard the same bell, said the same words. To modern people, this life might seem dull, but to those inside it, the repetition was sacred. It gave life meaning through structure, and in that structure the mind could rest. Like waves returning to the shore, like breath following breath, like a mind drifting to sleep. The slow birth of mechanical clocks. For centuries, people relied on the sun, candles, water, and prayers to measure time. But these methods were not always accurate or easy to use. In the late Middle Ages, a new invention slowly began to change the way time was kept. Mechanical clocks. The first mechanical clocks appeared in Europe in the 13th century. They were large machines made of iron gears, weights, and chains. Unlike the simple sundials or water clocks, mechanical clocks could work indoors and during the night. However, these early clocks were not very precise. They sometimes ran fast or slow and needed regular adjustment. Most of these clocks were installed in church towers or town halls. Their loud bells rang out to mark the hours. People in the town could hear the bells and know the time, even if they did not have a personal clock. This was important for organizing daily activities such as markets, work shifts, and public meetings. The design of mechanical clocks improved slowly over centuries. Each new invention added more precision. The addition of the escapement mechanism was a key breakthrough. It controlled the movement of the gears and allowed the clock to tick evenly. Later, the invention of the pendulum clock by Christian Huygens in the 17th century greatly increased accuracy. Despite these advances, clocks were still rare and expensive. Only churches, rich households, and important public buildings had them. Ordinary people mostly relied on the sound of bells or natural signs, like the position of the sun. The mechanical clock was not just a machine. It changed the way people thought about time. It made time measurable, visible, and shared. Time was no longer something only the sun or the stars controlled. It became something human-made, precise, and constant. The slow ticking of the clock, the swinging of the pendulum, and the ringing of bells brought a new rhythm to life, a rhythm that echoed through towns and cities. It was a rhythm that did not change with the seasons or weather. It was steady, predictable, and comforting. And this steady rhythm, repeated hour after hour, day after day, could also help a restless mind to find peace. Like the gentle ticking inviting sleep, one tick at a time, minutes and seconds, dividing time. Even further, once hours became fixed and clocks began to tick, people started to divide time even more. 1 hour became 60 minutes. 1 minute became 60 seconds. These are not numbers chosen by nature. They were chosen by tradition and by mathematics. The idea comes from the Babylonians. As mentioned before, they used a base 60 number system. 60 was a useful number. It could be divided in many ways. Half of 60 is 30. 1/3 is 20. 1/4 is 15. This made it perfect for early timekeeping. But minutes and seconds, as small as they are, were not used in everyday life at first. They were tools for astronomers and mathematicians. In ancient texts, a minute was called pars minuta prima, or the first small part. A second was pars minuta secunda, or the second small part. The names became shorter: first minute, second minute, or simply minute and second. In the Middle Ages, most people still didn't care about such small divisions. Their lives moved with the sun, not with the second hand of a clock. But over time, as science advanced, the need for precision grew. Sailors used seconds to calculate their position at sea. Astronomers used them to track the movement of stars. And eventually, mechanical clocks became accurate enough to measure them. By the 18th century, seconds were part of daily life for more people. Watches had second hands. Factories ran on strict schedules. Trains left at exact times. Every tick of the second hand meant something. Time was no longer slow. It was fast. It was exact. It was always moving forward, yet the structure remained the same. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. Numbers within numbers, circles within circles. The design never changed. Only the speed did. If you listen to an old clock in a quiet room, you will hear the seconds pass. One tick, then another, and another, always the same, never skipping, never changing, just like the beating of a heart or the rhythm of a breath. And as each second falls into the next, the mind can follow, slowly, gently, steadily, until the seconds fade and silence takes their place.